Bolts and Leviathans, and you can see it right there. It's here in studio, so we'll see how things adjust out for it. Bolts do have first pick this time around, so we'll see where they decide to shift their bans over towards.
Venenu already taking that patented Shinto strategy of the gum chewing into application here today. First time ever, I believe, that we've ever seen Venenu actually taking that strat away from Shinto. You know, a little bit of mind games here, Nika.
Maybe trying to get some of that Shinto power.
Tell me a little bit about this Cerberus that we've been seeing kind of rise up recently. Was it just some adjustments, maybe just kind of because of this healer meta that he's kind of come back in?
I think obviously he's a great god into the healer meta, but it's more specifically the shifts we've seen to make Guardians like stronger in solo lane compared to the Warriors. And Stobe is just a pick that he's not necessarily the best god in that role or anything, but he's just a safe pick. You can pick top 3. He's good into pretty much anything he faces, and I think it's just a good god to take away from Jocko, who's had a lot of really good games on it.
So we see the first bans coming through: Cerberus, Osiris, and Erlong Shen. While on the flip side, Leviathans have banned away Artemis and Umoja. Raijin still on the table. We'll see if the Leviathans are going to leave that one up between these mid laners, but there's still plenty of other big picks as well. Gilgamesh is available. We do still have some top priority supports like the Fafnir, like the Ymir as well. Taco, where do you kind of see this final ban maybe swinging?
Well, it's interesting because, if anything, that the quarterfinals of playoffs so far has kind of led me to believe that Gilgamesh has sort of fallen out of favoritism, so to say. I think the Erlong Shen has really risen in the ranks for playoffs exclusively, and seeing that hell ban, I'm inclined to believe that the Bolts might want to prioritize the Raijin just because you don't want to allow that pick to go to the Leviathans. But if they take Raijin, then you have to assume that there is ample opportunity for the Leviathans to respond with a nice solidified front line. And I think that when there's options like Terra, Artios, Serket, all open and up for grabs, it's a pretty tough decision for the Bolts.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be more of maybe a Gilgamesh trade here, a Gilgamesh Raijin trade, but it looks like they're giving that up to Leviathans, which is, I think it's risky. I mean, I think both these teams are probably the two teams that value Gilgamesh the most. And, Odin was open as well, we forgot about that one. But I'm expecting Shinto to lock in Raijin here, surely, right?
Maybe so. This Odin Ardeo matchup, we saw a little bit yesterday, and y'all said, well, what's that matchup in lane, and then as you transition out of laning phase, what's that matchup, as the team fights kind of break out?
Artio definitely is way stronger in the lane itself. Odin definitely needs a little bit of help. Damn, a lot of big picks open here, huh? I think the Odin is just relying on his team to have pressure elsewhere, and just allow them to get Odin to the stage where he's super impactful, which is around that first Gold Fury and onwards.
It's kind of wild that, we talk so much about all the other mid laners and we just kind of forgot about Tiamat for a moment. But then again, it's one of those gods who's almost always first ban no matter what. Teams are just always taking it away. So for Tiamat to kind of just slip through right here and Leviathan's able to pick it up, not too bad of an option for them. In the Bolts, they also pick up Serket, taking that one, funny enough, taking that one away from most likely Rongyu from the support lane, putting that one in Lasper's hands.
See, this is what I was expecting to be the responses from the Leviathans, and assume that the Bolts would want to take their mid lane pick earlier on. But this Giannis response is actually really cool because it introduces a lot of mobility, I think, and when you're already trying to lock down this Serket, you're going to have a lot of issues, I think, in terms of just protecting that Tiamat in the back line, because Odin, while he can technically corral members of a team, I do think the Leviathans are going to need some very heavy crowd control follow-up to really assist inside of that Odin cage. Otherwise, I'm not even sure that anyone aside from the Ardeo is really all that much of a threat to this Leviathan's composition so far, and the early game favoritism definitely leaning a little bit more towards the Bolts here in comparison to the Tiamat, because she's crazy good, but only if you can actually get that farm online.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that for sure. I think the Ymir is a good pick to kind of get some dual lane control, I'd say. But yeah, I think this game is definitely going to come down to how much farm is Shinto allowed to get on this Tiamat, and whether the Bolts can force anything away from him, I'd say, to build a lead inside lanes.
Nika, how are you liking this top three out of both of these teams? Who are you kind of giving that favoritism towards so far?
I kind of like the Bolts a little bit better. I mean, I know that Odin and Tiamat have been kind of top picks in their roles for most of this phase, but I think the Bolts have drafted a good comp to play away from mid lane and kind of ignore the whole mid pressure meta that we've seen, and I'd say a lot of pressure is going to be put onto this Odin maybe, and try and get Haddix fed and rotate him into these gold fights.
Fenrir and Cupid, funnily enough, the first 2 gods banned away here. Or maybe I shouldn't say funny enough, because both these hunters have shown that they've got some prowess against Cupid, and it works really well against both of their compositions. Serket and Nardio really do get hard shut down. Even Giannis can't go through those portals if you got that Fields of Love under you. So Bolts have their first 3 picks in. The last 2 bans now for Leviathans. It's Izanami has been able to slip all the way through here on a Heimdall taken away. That's kind of the game 3, the last do or die moment there for Zapman is to go back to the Heimdall. So funny enough to actually see it here banned by the Bolts, but that does still leave Rom open. That's kind of been one of the more go-to hunters as of recent, Taco.
Rom has been a top pick priority, but the Chernobog, I think, is a little bit more crucial here for the Leviathans because you want to have some sort of global asset to try and mitigate some of the early to mid-game pressure the Bolts might try to apply. Because right now, what this top 3 out of the Bolts is leading me to believe is that they're just looking for early buff invade control because Serket, she's someone that can get in, secure, and confirm a buff, no problem off that Deathbane, and then immediately bail in just in case she gets caught out. Okay, well, that's fine. We have Giannis. We have 3 space and time. So for the Bolts, I wouldn't be surprised to see Awesome Jake maybe even looking towards the Fafnir or a Terra here possibly, because Terra, even though she can struggle against the likes of an Odin, you have to remember there's not much mobility coming out of the other portion of the front line. The Ymir would be really easy to lock down. Even a Khepri could be detrimental because there is a lot of single target focus as well out of the Leviathan's follow-up.
Yeah, how hard is it kind of to fight into this Odin Tiamat combination they have? Even the Ymir, you throw so many of these obstacles through, Nico, what's kind of the response that you make here as a team? You see this much structure base picked up here, between the Ring of Spears, between the wall. What's kind of the answer you have to go for?
I think exactly what Bolts are doing. I mean, they can't really deal with the Yen Assault. I mean, if that hit, that hits, right? But I think Leviathans are at risk of getting completely out-pressured everywhere this game. I mean, the Bolts draft is ridiculous. Pressure everywhere other than maybe mid, but the Yanis just allows them to play through anywhere.
And then they lock in the Gilgamesh and Apollo, which we kind of briefly talked about how Gilgamesh may have fallen out of favor here, but this is a god that Lasbra and Panatom both do like going towards. And speaking of new and developing things that have popped up as of recent, Kabrakan as a 10th pick for the Leviathan.
Look at this Leviathan's comp, and they've got so much peel, so much CC, so many walls.
So a lot of walls.
I mean, you've got so much to deal with in order to finally get on top of this Tiamat, who's then going to be hard to kill because Shinto usually very good with his relics and his positioning. And even if you kill Shinto and it costs you a lot, Zap is on one of the hardest ADCs to dive in a team fight in Chernobog. So I'm kind of on the opposite foot. I think I like the Leviathan's comp.
And this is a map where you need to memorize the way the mini-map works right now and looks right now because it is going to change a lot. Those walls will change the geometry. We'll have to watch where the Bolt's pressure is and how much that can change. I'm also going to keep my eye on Panatom because right now he's making his way towards the duo lane, has the cage, and is slowly but surely encapsulating the Bolts. And there's going to be a good wall, a good cage to lock down Bera, and they've got the burst damage for it, but he's going to use the beads. He's walking through, hits the shield that ends up detonating, finds the kill, and Jake just has to watch as his carry dies.
And that's exactly what I expect from Panatom on this pick. Walk over to duo lane, cage the Apollo, especially when he's pre-level 5, and enjoy your first blood CDR as well. So a nice cheap option for him on this warrior jungle. Means that damage output for the Leviathans in the early game, not super scary, because Shinto on Tiamat, that's not an early game damage pick, so you're going to need some extra damage coming from Zapman and Rongyu in particular.
Well, speaking of Rongyu, locked down. The cage gets dropped by Panatom, though, looking to lock away.
Wow!
With a big ult comes ripping through to get the damage out there, but they aren't able to pick up more than just Rongyu. Haddock's incredibly low, but a great heal keeps him alive for the fight. Good disengaged damage coming out from Venenu. And they might even want to look further more for this fight. Woo! The Bolts jump back in. Jake just waiting for Zapman to come through the wall, and Vin's going to be able to pick up the kill. Shinto is one more box on their checklist, and then Yarkor versus the world. Only his tower to save him. And it looks like it's enough.
Might be. I mean, 3 people still here. Yarkor will not get dove. And a great response from the Leviathans. I mean, Ven hits a huge ult, and it looks like it still wasn't going to be enough to swing that fight in the Bolt's favor. But Lasbra hit a massive drop kick at the very end of that fight to make sure that Shinto couldn't kill Haddox. Haddox is able to stick around, heal back up. And then such a greedy play from the Leviathans to try and go back and get the blue whenever everyone from the Bolts is still there. They thought the fight was over. The Bolts knew it wasn't. So a 3-for-0. And oh, by the way, Bera got to do whatever he wanted on that left side of the map. He stole away red buff. He was able to get 2 waves under tower at the very least, and now he's going to be very far ahead of Zapman after not making a rotation that took a long time to resolve.
Panatom may be happy he's a warrior this time around. A lot of damage, a lot of control.
Not enough to kill you. So I think that you are skipping some pretty valuable relics if you go Phantom, but I would love to see Jake just go straight into, after this Thebes, go Relic Dagger, have Blink Phantom, upgrade them both, and be ready to use them all.
Maybe be proactive, and that's what they're doing on the map. Bolts just barely able to get the Pyro, but they lose Lasbra for it. Shinto with the ult over the wall locks down the Gilgamesh. And so a fair trade, and now it's the aggression on the Zap. Beads get forced because Jake uses the ult. He goes up into the sky, comes crashing back down. No one from the Bolts looking to get aggressive too deep on him. Instead, let's just take a tier 1.
Yeah, Zap uses the beads right away, or the dash right away rather, and then gets caught by Jake with a good idea to use Last Breath.
In favor of the Bolts, despite the kills being right next to each other. That Pyromancer helping out, but really just the farm, a lot of steals that have been going their way. A good portal from Vin forces Rong Yu to rethink his engage under the tier 1 tower in mid. In fact, Jake is going to get aggressive. Lazarus here, Winds of Shamash get dropped down. Rong Yu brought back into the fight, a good freeze, but it only connects on the jungler. Lazarus jumps out. They still haven't found the kill just yet. A great cage, though, from Panatom. Locks up Lasbra. They end up trading jungle for support, but they're looking for more. The Bolts continue diving in.
But they don't have enough to kill Panatom quite yet. Portal, a little bit mistimed there from Ven as well, and with him out of mana, that will do it for this engagement. Well, they're dominating vision on this left side. That's where you expect this next fight to take place, around this Gold Fury, so Bolt's in a really good position now.
Yeah, not just dropping the ward vision they already had, even more wards getting thrown out there. Zap has to use his beads. Aegis is available, and ult is available, but he gets burned down before he can get up into the sky. Nowhere to go, and that is a clean kill for the Bolts by his team. He's the one peeking around the corners, much like this, where admittedly, if you get caught out, you're just dead. But it doesn't seem like he's too fearful of that. In fact, he's even going to try to put pressure on this purple bot.
Gets stunned by Rong Yu, and he's going to take some damage, but he's Serket, so he should be A-okay. I mean, Jake has been in everywhere. He's been a part of every single kill so far for the Bolts. Been in a very good position.
Oh, there's the ult from Shinto, a portal coming in from Vin, who's about half health. Lasbra is now taken down to half health. Panatom looking to get aggressive. Haddix gets stunned out, and the cage is dropped, but he is the one who picks up that Phantom, as you had highlighted earlier. He walks right through the cage. Vin has to use the ult to disengage, but they're going to keep chasing under this tier 1. Lasbra, Haddix, both half health. There's a single portal on the wall, but no one's going to make it in time. Haddix finally goes down.
Yeah, throughout that team fight, the difference between starting a fight at full HP as a backliner and 70% HP is really, really big.
Maloney Fury pulled by the Bolts once again, getting burned fast this time around. They're going to be able to secure it before the Leviathans have a good chance to respond.
Wall.
A good wall, but not good enough. Haddix walks away. A great wall coming down from Yarkor, but it's not enough to lock up Lasbra. He's low. Through space and time is used from Vin. The disengage from the Bolts is good. 23 minutes in, and they've now managed to push this to almost 4,000 gold.
We're going to go to gold. We're going to get it because we have ward coverage, and we're still pretty healthy, and we're in a good position. And then if they show up, I'm going to Giannis ult us out of here, and we're going to all take the portals. And I feel like every time people say that, they then don't take the portals and die. But that time, the Bolts are on the same page.
Jake's looking for blood as of right now. Good body blocks, Rong. You can't go anywhere. The Winds of Shamash get dropped. The Ymir has nothing to do and nothing to say. Gets taken down, and Haddix, Jake, and now Barra want more. Barra dives onto Shinto, gets some good damage out there. The portal taken by Vin, of all people. A drop kick into the wall forces Zapman to get stunned out. He has the dash, but it is the chase from the Bolts right now. They're looking for more. Shinto manages to get the back off, but that is more than you could say for Zapman. Killed off right outside his right Phoenix.
Yarkor still has that ultimate, but portal's there from Ven once again. 2-0-5 on this. Giannis has been able to do a lot of work, and it's not like he's lacking in the player damage department either. He's second from the top, only behind Shinto. Ubera did a good job of taking out of that fight last time around. Shinto, if you can put that type of pressure on him, said one to Shinto, keep him out of the fight, and just keep the Leviathan split up. Now that the Phantom is on cooldown, though, Gore, this is where the Leviathans, I think, might be able to make a play happen. Now that Phantom's down, we've got Odin Cage back up. Zapman's up in about 10 seconds, but he has no ult. I think I still might be looking to be aggressive here from the Leviathan. Shinto still has Aegis.
We'll see what they decide to do. The Bolts got their backs off. Jake just uses his ult and get some good damage onto Yarkor. Great stun from Haddix keeps them engaged, but they are looking for that fight. Unfortunately for Shinto, he doesn't have much to say about it. Burned before he can do anything. Panatom body blocked, locked down. Barracuda picks up the kill there, and what was a 4v5 turns very quickly into a 2v5 with the Leviathans running.
Now the difference there in that fight is ward coverage. The Bolts have a ton, the Leviathans have near zero. And this is where those marginal advantages sometimes materialize. Not so much in the items or in the XP. I mean, the Bolts have been ahead all game, but haven't been able to create giant item advantages.
Only one stack on that Rage since he picked it up. The Wind Demon on the other side for Barra has definitely been a lot more helpful. There's also just now for Rongyu a Spectral Armor picked up. So the Bolts are really looking to collapse in and surrounding this Tier 2 tower on left as of right now, but not really overcommitting to it. I'm actually surprised the Leviathans feel like they can put up a good defense here.
Because this is where mobility becomes less valuable as a team. You just have less room to work with. You know, it's like when a team gets down in the red zone, a lot of their speed goes out the window because the defense is just more cooped up. I'm excited for football season, if you couldn't tell. Same thing here in Smite. When you get down in these smaller areas, Giannis mobility, Circuit mobility, Apollo Global, it matters less because they're all right in front of you. And so the Bolts might have trouble sieging in these moments. They don't have great long-range poke, where the Leviathans do, and that could become a problem.
They get the Tier 2 in mid, and that opens up Lasber to start roaming around. But you can see, as you mentioned, a very close cluster of Leviathans here under the Tier 2 and left. Vin has through space and time. I think he's waiting for the call from his team. Lasber's looking for the 1v1 on Panatom, but that's the cue to go in for Jake on the other side. He's going to get aggressive. There's through space and time.
Aegis.
Beautiful Aegis from Zapman keeps him from taking that damage, but then forced to use his bead as Jake jumps up on his head and tries to throw him back to his team. Not going to be able to find that. A good wall from Rongyu, but Yarkor's just taking up so much damage. Phantom forced to be used, Haddix falls back, but the Bolts have the advantage in positioning.
This should be the left side Phoenix. Machito's still here. Rongyu trying to get his back off. It gets a double stun, but he won't live through, and Lasber is able to find kill number 10 for the Bolts.
The damage turnaround is trying to be there. Shinto's looking for more and does
Barrel
find the
stuffs
kill onto Venenu. Now just looking for the chase down, trying to find anybody else, but he goes way too far, and Barra just finds the great crits. Haddix does go down and loses his life. They
Nice
only
kick.
have Jake, and they have Haddix, but that's all they need. They're going to find one more for the Dia side and take game number 1 under the left side Phoenix.
Barra just under no pressure whatsoever. My man's isn't in the studio, and he isn't in the minds of the Leviathans in that team fight. No one's able to look at him. Shinto jumps in, but again, the Bolts just are able to control the pace of these team fights so well. Their front line doing a ton of work in that game.
Out into a large enough lead for it to mean anything substantial surrounding the objective fights.
Yeah, I think it's like we said in the pre-game, well, like in the picks and bans, just they don't really give Shinto any room, it felt like, in these late-game team fights to do what he needed to do. And Leviathans just weren't really able to establish enough early control with the draft they had, I'd say.
I mean, a lot of structures, a lot of walls built up here for Leviathans and their comp. I mean, 3 gods who can pick it, but it just seemed like there was never a sane target. Every single fight you go in, it's one structure thrown. Okay, we just got around that one, no problem. Let's throw another one and see if we can stop them. Well, no, that one didn't work. All right, well, third time's the charm. Maybe we get him with the Odin. Nope, okay, that one didn't work for him either. I mean, well, there's just too much difficulty for Leviathans to execute these walls. There was just too much escape option. I mean, Giannis is the perfect guy to get your team out of these walls.
I think it's also, when you pick all these walls and to lock people down, I think you also need to draft stuff that actually punishes the people who are stuck in there. And I mean, Tiamat, there's a little bit of follow-up damage, but I feel like they don't have that big AoE damage to really punish those inside.
As we take a look at the post-game stats for you, can see 6-2 on Lasbra, 2-0-12 for Awesome Jake. He put in quite a performance on that Circuit support, Taco.
He was able to just have all the mobility in the world, and that was really what ended up biting Leviathans in the butt at the end there. I think it's just too problematic.
Ready to go, and we'll see what adjustments have been made for it. Will we see some similar fancies of the Leviathans of Game 1, or maybe we see some changes up here to go against the Bolts. Bolts up 1-0, and Leviathans will take the first pick. It leaves plenty of options open. We saw the Tiamat get let through last time around. That It means that the Raijin also got left open, but nobody cared about the Raijin, which was one of the kind of the hot topics we talked about a lot in the early stages, kind of pregame for it.
I'm more curious to see whether or not the Leviathans are going to be able to keep their 100% win-loss when they're in that first pick position intact. That's a little bit more impressive, I would say, even than that Raijin record that Shinto's been rocking, because game one, that was all the bolts in the driver's seat. So now Leviathans in this first pick position, if they are able to respond with a game 2 victory, that's going to be a lot for the Bolts to think about probably moving forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if it essentially amounted to these two teams kind of just taking turns being in that first pick position.
When we see this Serket ban here for the Leviathans, we know that this has been a pick that Rungyu has liked, but is this just a case of they don't want to first pick this one and they also just don't want to give it away to the Bolts, or is this just kind of a respect ban towards Jake from game 1?
I think it's for sure more of like, even though Leviathans like the pick, Bolts can flex it, and you don't really want to first pick Serket. A lot of stuff is good into that pick, and there's just higher priority stuff as well for them to look at. So I think they just don't want to deal with it. It's just an annoying god for them.
We see the first sets of bans have completed themselves. It's going to be Artemis, Serket, and Giannis on the side of the Leviathans, and the Bolts will ban away the Artio that gave them so much trouble, the Osiris, and Yamoja. That still leaves a ton of top priority picks available, like the Hell, who we saw Shinto pilot in game number 2 yesterday, and now we'll get to pilot in game number 2 today.
But there could be a chance of an immediate response for a Raijin Odin here, and the thing is, when we look at the Odin in game 1, I mean, one of the things that was missing the most, it felt like, was just that follow-up after the fact for whenever you had somebody isolated in there, and I think that a Raijin could definitely fill the gaps, but some other immediate answers of anti-heal application, I like the Cerberus pickup. It's just going to be something with some direct pressure early on if it is intended for solo or support.
Yeah, I think like you said, I mean, they could go with the Odin again, but... Oh, they would go for both, actually. But
double whammy.
Yeah, I think the Cerberus, wherever it goes, I mean, it's just to give them that little bit of pressure, keep up the trend of the Bolts drafts. I'm surprised the Gilgamesh goes by again, honestly, but maybe Leviathans pick it up there.
A little bit of flexibility with these two picks. Cerberus hasn't only been seen in solo. We have seen it support a couple of times. I think Genetics is one player who's run this Cerberus support. Odin, as we saw last game, can be flexed in the jungle. Maybe not the greatest success with it, but we'll see what kind of shakes up here as the picks and bans go through for them. Bolts, because they have that ambiguity, they can still kind of flex around their third pick and maybe kind of whittle around the bans and see where the Leviathans end up throwing some bans. And when you have a pick, these kinds of two picks like this, Nico, what does that do for you guys in the bans? Like, do you say, okay, we're just going with something safe? Do you go for a more targeted aggression at that point?
I think for Bolts, I mean, I think they just need to draft a comp that is able to just control this Hell early game. I mean, we've seen when a Hell gets pressure in mid to start off the game, she can run that game, and it's so hard to punish her as a result. So I think Bolts will be just trying to match anything the Hell can do, and then just have team fight gods that can deal well into it later on.
Some flexibility on the side of Leviathans as well. Erlang Shen Fenrir. Well, with the Erlang Shen locked in, Fenrir looking like this may be going over to support role, Taco?
Could be Fenrir support. I would have to assume that it would probably feel best in the support role here in comparison to an Erlang Shen support or even an Erlang solo. I know we've seen Haddix rock the Erlang solo once before, but even then, it is a little bit more stressful, especially if he's going to be having to deal with either Cerberus or Odin. Not exactly ideal matchups there, so that really only leaves Rongyu to be playing this Fenrir in the support role. Plus, in the dual lane, Brutalize application against Apollo, going to be able to follow through that dash, some good harassment utility there, but I am concerned again because one issue that the Leviathans had in game 1 with the Bolts was how easily they could get to the backline and get to the Hell, and Apollo being prioritized so early on here, I think it's simply just the Bolts putting a lot of emphasis on the fact that Barracuda can just take that Chariot and immediately dunk down onto Shinto.
Yeah, I mean, in the very end fight that we saw around that Phoenix Bear, just kind of got to free cast on this Apollo. Nobody was able to get towards that backline. It's just a lot of more so retreating from the Leviathans, just trying to push them further and further away. They weren't able to push them far enough back. Bans for Phase 2 come through. Heimdall and Izanami with the Apollo ban. Rightfully so. Take a couple of extra hunters away from the Leviathans, and they respond with a Gilgamesh as a safe ban, as a, we don't know where Cerberus and Odin are going, so let's just go with something safe in Gilgamesh. Lasper did well with it in game number 1, and just also taking a shot at the mid lane, taking the Morgan off the board.
Yeah, I think the Morgan ban it kind of fits a similar role as the Yanis, right? They don't want to deal with a mage that can clear mid quickly and then rotate around and impact the side lanes. I think Leviathans are definitely just trying to play around mid control here with the top 3 that they've picked.
Do you go with a mage pick here for immediately out of the ban, or do you leave that flexibility option open for Venenu?
I feel as though the Bolts would probably be better off just holding a pick for Venenu, just because then they get to see the rest of their composition kind of rounded off. But it does seem to be a reoccurring theme here of just non-stop harassment to the backline through the Cosmos, going to have that semi-global utility, and again, just be able to dunk down on top of this Hell. And it's not just the Hell that's at threat here. Looking at this Erlong Shen, I would personally not be a fan of having to pilot the Erlong into a Cerberus, Odin, and Ratatoskr. There's so much to basically counteract a lot of his initiation features, and maybe you could speak more on it, Nika, but the slow applications as well seem
I think the thing
frustrating.
with Erlang, he's always this pick where he's so good into everything he plays against, but I mean, just so easily he can get countered. I think it's like a coin toss here from Leviathans, really. If Panatom gets a strong early game, I don't think it'll be an issue that they've counterpicked him this hard, but if they fall behind, then he's going to be a very easy target for the Bolts.
They do hold final pick for Venenu, and one thing that was hinted at earlier was maybe they just taught to Odin Raijin here to kind of fight against this Hell, and well, Raijin hasn't been banned away just yet. It has only been the Giannis. Tiamat and Morgan Le Fay still open, who have been 2 of the gods that a lot of players and teams have still been going towards, and
10th
currently
pick Tiamat.
looking at a 10th pick Tiamat. Nika, how often do you get to say a 10th pick Tiamat?
I don't think that's ever happened, right?
I can't think of a single I've seen games where she's been like just forgotten about, like nobody cared about her, but I don't think I've ever seen a 10th pick of a Tiamat.
I actually personally think the Raijin would maybe have been a better pick here into the comp he's into, but I mean, you can never say no to a Tiamat. A god that strong the whole season. I mean, you probably just have to go with it.
I mean, you're going against a Hell and an Erlong Shen, 2 gods with some great sustain within their kits. Does the Tiamat work a little bit better for applying that anti-heal, or would you want something like a Raijin or maybe even a Merlin to be able to spread that anti-heal quickly?
If it's about just anti-heal application, I think it doesn't really get much better than Merlin or Raijin. Those are easily 2 of the best gods for applying
Towards
that. But
crit a little bit, and of course Jingwei better in crit
She
builds
does love
than in
that.
bow builds. And you've got not just the Ratatoskr, but the Cerberus as well. Remember that you can actually use agility as you get hit by Stygian Torment. As Cerberus kind of rises you up, you can just agility out, and you don't go to where you want to go. So that can be a difference maker in these team fights. I'm fine with a Jingwei pick. My only concern is the laning phase and how much bullying Zapman might receive. As Nika said, it's pretty easy to play around duo this time of year, but he's going to have his hand full dealing with all the counter picks on the other side.
Yeah, it feels like there's just as much that is going for the Leviathans, maybe going against him. Right now it's Hell damage, not quite a connection there from Shinto. Vin is just barely going to get out of that one alive. 15 HP, and that might be more than we can say for Yarkor. Forced to run towards the Bolts tower line. Lasbra with a clean gank picks up first blood.
Almost good for the Leviathans, and then not so
Kills
good.
me.
Exactly. It's the 3v3 in mid they're very concerned about right now, and for good reason.
No, they might need to be concerned about the 2v2. So far, Vin, twice in a row, has been hit by this. Yesterday, we saw this a lot as well. Hell does a surprising amount of damage. I think everybody is continually perplexed by how much she can take your health bar down, how quickly she can do it in this early game. Shinto was just an ability and then maybe a second ability off from getting the first blood there onto Vin. Doesn't seem like they're going to be able to find it here, but Panatom's looking for an invade. Shinto's left him out to dry. Vin's going to make the rotation over. There's going to be the taunt. Lasbra is looking for this fight, just trying to keep him preoccupied. And with the rotation from Vin, there's good damage, but the heal from that 9 turns blessing keeps him going. Zapman kills off Jake over the dual lane. Panatom's one hit, but it doesn't matter. Vin is the one who gets taken down. Shinto with a great rotation. Haddix is now joining the fray, but Lasbra is not going to get saved this time around. Shinto picks up 2, Zap picks up 1, and the Leviathans find the matchup they want.
It's kind of the opposite of game 1, but Barra doesn't want to give it up that easily, trying to get some revenge on Zapman, but Barra hasn't backed and bought quite yet. It's a lot like the last game where the Leviathans got first blood, but then the Bolts get a nice 3-for-0 elsewhere on the map, and they start to really run away with it, and this is just simple. No beads, no CC immunity. The net worth charts, he's up 500 gold on the next highest member, 600 gold over Venenu in particular. He doesn't have beads for 50 seconds, so maybe the Bolts can find a window to punish him, but they need to punish him because otherwise he's going to start getting out of hand.
Well, Gold Fury started up by the Leviathans here. It's getting burned. There is not a soul from the Bolts over here. Instead, they're going to look for a kill elsewhere. They will get Yarkor, but it is a simple solo kill for the Fury. Feels like a good trade for the Leviathans.
It is a good trade for the Leviathans, but you definitely don't want to keep falling this far behind in the solo lane as Ben loses the beads to that blink ult. Now, wrong you.
Oh, no.
Thank you very much.
And hey, let's go ahead and just seal the deal to make it worthwhile for them. Jake blinks forward, drops the cage, and is going to get the Phantom out of there. Haddix joins in, and they just burst down Wrong You out of nowhere. The three of them get a return kill.
Bera's on the
Overall,
way.
Bera looking to crash down. Shinto's gotten way too aggressive here. Jake's almost dead, but the Mez sets him up. Haddix, as well as Lazara, just lock him against the wall. Bera gets the last hit, and they shut down Shinto.
Imagine Zap's not letting him know that Bera's on the way over.
Didn't use the beads, so at least he still has that for him, but that is about it as of right now. This is a good spot for Vin. He caught back up that deficit we were highlighting earlier. Now Haddix is looking to set things up. A great double stun, and now the team gets to join in. A good wall actually helps out with Yarkor. They're going to find the turnaround kill onto Lazara. Haddix is just one hit away, and he's going to turn it around on the Panatom instead, and he gets out with his life. It ends up being 1-for-1, jungle for jungle.
Man, what a turnaround there. I mean, Haddix plays that so perfectly to start off, picking them both up. Don't wait until the team is close. You can just get it started by yourself. Yar doesn't have any in the build quite yet. Little bit of defense. I think that would be exactly what I'd be looking for. Interrupt the tremors from the Cerberus, kind of do it all.
Well, it feels bad to be Cabrakan so far this set. Right now, lockdown, no, the stun not going to be enough to connect. Lazara has a little bit of damage, but instead, Wrong You Panatom rotating over and maybe just falling back onto the Totem of Ku. Haddix uses virtually everything, has no beads right now as well. It's just going to have to lay back and wait.
Panatom's on the way, and as you mentioned, no beads. Here he goes.
They're going to get aggressive on him. Half health already. Good pin, good trimmers. And there's no way you're going to be able to get out of this one. Goes for the up down, gets a little bit of healing, but he's still just outside the tower range. No help from the team, and Yarkor finally gets some payback.
Got to know that even if Wrongyu is just the one who shows up, that if he loops on you like that you have no ward vision, you could potentially be in trouble. Definitely too far forward there from Haddix. A little bit of a misplay.
Pyroman's started up now from the Leviathans. They get the kill on right, and they go immediately to the neutral objective. Jake was over the corner, or over the wall, and then ran away. Wrong Use chasing him down. Yarkor's getting aggressive against Lazara. They're fighting all across the board. Uses the ult to try and lock down the rat, but is unsuccessful doing so. Wrong Use stunned.
Not fall behind, especially with Shinto's play style on top of that. This is kind of as expected. I like this. Group up. Even Haddix and Yarkor are here. Yarkor has to use, or loses a good amount of HP right off the front end.
And goes in, good stuns from Haddix to make sure they get the peel. The Bolts grouped up, just waiting for him. Same thing could be said for the Leviathans. I don't think I've ever seen this grouping from both teams on the other side of the wall, waiting for the other one to aggress onto an Oni Fury or take 2 steps too far forward. Nobody's going to bite on the Bolts. Leviathans are going to be the ones who chomp down. Fury started up already at about half health. Jake, Haddix right around the corner. Good jump in from Wrong You. Picks up Jake and brings him back to the team. They drop the Fury, and Jake has to drop his cage before his life gets dropped down. He jumps out. Bera crashes in. Wrong You is 1 hit away, and Bera picks that one up. Yarkor cleans off the support for the Bolts. It's 1-for-1, and now Yarkor's versus the world.
Double stun. Good interrupt on that Mez, and Yarkor's going to fall, but Bera now in trouble.
And he's got the damage to turn it around, but not enough to get the kill. Panatom picks him up, and now Zapman with the collateral kills off 2 in 1 shot. Lazara's last man standing for the Bolts, and he's not going to be able to run away here. It's a 14-minute deicide for the Leviathans.
And they've still got the damage alive in order to go and grab this Oni Fury, and that's where the difference is. The Leviathans with this style of composition versus last game is that they can split up, they can get a little bit separated, and then they can re-engage the fight much better. Love that play from Yarkor. He's in such great position during that fight. It's a good example of how your job sometimes as a frontliner is to die. And the mantle procced at the same time, so no stun came home. And the Bolts have to try and do a better job of keeping Jake safe off the rip as Bera, speaking of rip, rest in peace, Barracuda, Zapman with the easy solo kill.
Bringing us the Boomer 1v1, the throwback to the 100 Day. Bear, I believe, won the Honor Joust. Well, that's not the one that's going to pay the big bucks. This is the one, and Zapman finds the kill. 4-0-3 right now for this Jingwei. Does have to use those beads, but ultimately I'm sure Zap is more than happy with that. 5,000 gold, 15, almost 16 minutes in. The Leviathans are in a good spot.
In last game, Zap had 1 rage stack as the Bolts were starting to siege with Fire Giant. His rage is fully stacked already, and Barra was probably checking how many stacks he had after that last play.
All wrong, you picks up Jake. Jake brought back to Zap. Zap's feeling more than happy with his level 11 versus the 17 that Zapman is. 3 levels up over Barracuda. He's still forced to fall back here. Lasber's trying to get aggressive alongside Jake. Cage not dropped just yet. The dash out from Zap. There's going to be the Cage. Phantom's going to be here. The crits are ringing true on the other side. Finally, they shut down Zapman with the dive from Barra, from Lasber, and they're going to take out Rongyu with them. They're taking quite a good amount of poke from the tower. Vin comes in just to help seal the deal.
In these team fights, and Zap wasn't able to get the Aegis off in that fight, so nicely done.
Vin gets locked up a little bit. Tiamat at this point of the game, though, isn't as susceptible to that damage as what we have seen in the past, although that might have been spoken too soon. Now he's looking to get locked down. Great wall from Yarkor, and then a good taunt follow-up. Shinto gets the kill onto the opposing mid laner, puts himself up 2.5 levels.
And it's just backline diff in the level department right now. Barra has caught up to Zap because of that shutdown and double, as I was mentioning, but a little bit ago it was a combined like 6 levels down in mid and ADC for the Bolts. And even if your front line's doing good work, this is going to start happening to them where they can just get gunned down by the damage from the backline. 3 in a row now for Shinto, 5-1-5. And he's still hell. Like, he's still scaling at this point. That's a scary thought.
Your backline collectively is 9-2-9. I mean, they are doing a great job for the Leviathans. And being part of 10 out of the 15 kills here is good for Shinto. Zap maybe bit off more than he can chew. Barrett gets the purple buff. And Zap gets out with his life. I think both of them can call that one a win.
Prots if you're full runes whenever you're up there, and of course you get the CC immunity and all that, but at least make Barra make the choice. And in that situation, he didn't have much of a choice to make.
Well, you had wanted to see this a little bit ago. They got the Pyromancer. Now they're going for the Fire Giant. Leviathans taking it down already at half health. Haddock spots it out. You have Barra making his way over alongside Lasber. Lasber still has his ult, and Jake is the one who's getting aggressive. Drops the Cage, but his health bar drops faster. Zap going to pick him up on the disengage with his ult. And that is one front line stripped away for the Bolts.
And Barra's already used the ultimate. He's out of mana, so he can't continue this. This is going to be a Fire Giant for Leviathans. And Jake just unable to withstand the onslaught. I mean, no Spectral Armor for him. How could he? He only got 3 items. You know, how could he have had time to itemize against the level 20 Jing Wei, who's up 6 levels on him? It's a tough position right now as a front liner in this meta, and you're feeling it now for Jake, who just got one-tapped off that Blink Cage. Haddox wasn't able to really get a good ultimate. He only got a Magi's in that situation for Panaton.
Oh my god, Zapman almost at one shot.
Okay.
Vin and does take care of Barra. He just shows up and kills him 7-1-4. Don't step to him. I was about to commend them taking the tier 2. Get out of there.
Okay, sorry.
Oh my god.
Sorry, sir. I gotta go into the booth and apologize to Zap.
How big was that crit?
Just in case I angered him at some point today, because otherwise he might be doing that to everyone. He is just going off right now. 11,000 player damage. And when you've got a Hell, you know you're going to be able to free cast because they're going to be all ending the Hell. When you're going up against a Hell and the ADC isn't killing your whole team, you've got no options anymore because you need to kill both. And the chances of you killing either one feel pretty slim now.
Well, hey, they knocked down a couple of tier 2s here. Leviathans feeling way better about their chances. More than 10 seconds left before Barra joins up. In fact, you know what? They're going to go ahead and send Jake to the grayscale as well. 40 seconds without your Odin support. You lose your mid Phoenix, you lose your right Phoenix, and they're going to start healing up here. And what is going to turn into a 4v5. Barra respawns, Vin respawns as well. They all still have their buff, but the Leviathans are going to go ahead and pull themselves back.
Clean up this Fury and get back in there. So we take a look at Zapman's play. Lasber just backed, and you know what? He probably got lucky that he backed. How many autos does it take for him to kill Ven in this instance? 1, 2, 3. 3 autos. Yeah, mages are OP, Gormizer, am I right? Mages. Yeah, Tiamat's so broken. Yeah. 2. You've got a really good chance to win, and that's certainly the case here.
Especially when you've got, what, 14,000 gold, or at least approaching 14,000 gold. They're grouping up, are the Leviathans, over on left, trying to get this left-hand Phoenix. Rongyu throws down the Bracer, so he's going to have not only the vision, but the buff for his team. Zapman and Shinto leading the way. They don't quite get the Phoenix, and it's going to be Haddix who steps up to the team. Zapman's half health. Zapman's getting chunked down. Jake is looking for a little bit more. The Aegis, the ult, it's all
Dead
used.
to Odin
And
Cage?
Zap's going to be able to get out of there. The turnaround is looking a little bit better, but Bara picks up the kill onto Zap. They pick up the kill onto Shinto, and it's the other 3 members for the Leviathans remaining. Can they get rid of Bara? One more hit is all it takes. Panatom cleans that one up so far now. 2 versus 2. That's all that's left. Vin, low health, but good turnaround. Haddix, good stun onto Panatom, but it looks like they're just trying to get away.
Yarkor doesn't have the blink, but he's just trying to keep Ven in combat and make sure that Ven can't go back to base, because look at this fire wave coming down the mid lane. That being said, Gore, I mean, right side isn't pushed up. They aren't going to be able, these minions aren't going to end all by themselves. As Ven goes in?
He's going to jump onto Yarkor. He gets the kill, but now Panatom's here. Panatom doesn't have the taunt. Vin doesn't have his cooldowns. That's going to be a good pin from Panatom and a kill. Kind of a delayed deicide. They kill off all 5 of the bolts there. And you had mentioned it. They're going to deal with these fire minions just in time in mid.
I mean, they just can't be that close, and that's the hard line to balance as a backliner, is I have to be close enough to my other backliner that I can peel for them and hit who's hitting them, but I can't be getting hit by the same abilities. And that was the problem there for the Leviathans, that Zap and Shinto a little bit too grouped up. They get hit by too much of the same stuff, and the bolts are able to really coordinate their dive really well. Cerberus in first, then Odin, then Apollo. You know, it was really, really well staggered. It made it hard for the Leviathans to stand up.
Ooh, Lasbra just now uses his ult, comes crashing back down to the blue buff, dealing with the fire minions on right. Barrow dealing with fire minions in mid. Fire Giant just a minute and a half shy from being enhanced, and Jake is getting burned down. Deja vu to the last FG fight. He's gone before the bolts can even reply. And now they're looking for Haddix. They're going a little deeper. Panatom goes forward, misses the taunt this time around. Lasbra backs forward, but Zap just does the damage that is necessary. He's almost dead though, but it doesn't matter. Triple kill for Zapman before he goes down, and that's going to be the deicide for the Leviathans. Shinto picks up the other 2, and they run down to endgame 2.
Zap for 5, baby. We're back right in Zap's wheelhouse. They get Zapman, but lose the game. 10, 3, and 10. A double-double for Zapman for the 2-time. And man, that's the problem with this Leviathans team, is that normally Shinto's the win con, but when Zap has a game like that, all of a sudden he can really start to feel it. And this is where he does it, man. He steps up for these big LAN events. Gore, I felt in my bones this game was over whenever Zap soloed Bear.
Not the same amount, especially in the hands of Shinto. So problematic.
Yeah, I think a big thing to note is Panatom had a very impactful game. Everywhere he went, he seemed to get a kill or an assist, and he kind of just set up Zap and Shinto to have a crazy backline performance. I mean, so many great individual plays from Zap. This is a classic Zapman game. And Shinto was just given way too much room, I think, on this Hell. He was like 3 levels up at some point, and you cannot be doing that with a Hell.
I know back over in, kind of in the green room, in the waiting room, where we're all sitting by watching this game, this play right here in particular kind of got everybody going, oh man, what was that? Getting that Odibo kill, as well as the crits beforehand. I mean, just Zapman getting a free cast in the backline. That's all you could ever ask for a hunter as seasoned as Zapman, even Barracuda for the flip side forward, is when you just have that opportunity to sit back and throw autos to your heart's content. I mean, this is a perfect setup here for the Leviathans.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, carries right now just have a crazy amount of damage. I mean, you're just seeing some of the numbers here, thousands from Hell, crits from Jingwei everywhere. Like, you just cannot give these backlines any room to have like this much freedom. Otherwise, you're just gonna end up losing like the bolts did.
And 8-2 from Shinto, but a 10-3 from Zapman. Even Barracuda got about 7 kills in that game. Number 1, game 2, she got let through and was first picked for it. Do you think that we see the Hell band away game number 3?
For sure. I think especially with bolts going back on first pick side with that choice, I think Leviathans won't risk playing into a Hell.
It's not a mistake that many teams want to make twice, or really a mistake that 8 teams want to make a first time through. As the first bans do come in, it's going to be Osiris and taking away Erlong Shen, making sure to keep Panatom off that god after his performance with it as well. Giannis and Yamoja on the flip side for Leviathans banned away.
So much being left open here yet again, though, because of the bolts just looking to really take away some of the more aggressive jungler options. Erlong, Osiris, which means we really have seen, tidbits of the Gilgamesh prioritization, but if the bolts were to go for another frontline or just utility-based jungle asset, then, well, it's going to be frontline that they're trying to take away with that Cerberus. It could possibly be the Bolts if the Leviathans don't ban Hell, just looking to snag Hell for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. If Hell's open here, I think either of these teams on first pick side will look for it. They did leave it open, so I guess they're not too scared of it.
Well, Circuit is also open.
Yeah, true. A lot open, so maybe not a surprise there, actually.
Circuit, Odin, RTO, Hell, Raijin, Tiamat. There's so many gods that are available at this point. I mean, we're at the point now where Tiamat's not just getting let through, but being 10th picked by a team at this point in time. It's so wild to see this development that we had where all phase long, she is, if it is open, you first pick it. I don't care what else is on the table, you got to get it. And now we're starting to see a little bit of the struggles of this god after a lot of the nerfs we've seen from her.
And Nika, rank streets are not safe for you today. All of this hell for today and yesterday, there's no way you're going to have a blast, man.
And Artios and Odin's still rising around as well. Yeah, rank's not going to be too fun for you over there in solo, is it? With a Hell first pick, that leaves Leviathans with 2 options for themselves. They'll go ahead and grab the RTO, make sure to get Hardcore back onto one of the more signature recent picks that he's got. He's one of the first players to have brought the RTO back in solo this phase.
Yeah, RTO just gives you so much control on that side of the map, and I think it is very important right now to have, like, not necessarily a winning lane, but you just want to make sure you are strong all across the map. You don't want to have any weaknesses in your comp right now.
You have Circuit picked alongside the RTO, so there's a little bit of the anti-heal that you were hinting at earlier, Taco, with that god being open to go up against the Hell. What do the Bolts kind of have to adjust to go against these 2 gods specifically now?
Well, now there's a ton of mobility because RTO, especially with that recent buff, getting the 100% movement speed in that bear chase form, it could be tough for a Hell to actually create some separation, but this Ares pickup could be very problematic for the Leviathans because the chains cripples, realistically, you only need to apply at least one of them to shut them down for enough time to essentially burst them out. And Cabrakan, seeing him being added on top of this Ares, it's evident that the Bolts, they're just trying to prevent the Leviathans from having free mobility to actually aggress into this Hell.
And there's the region that everyone's been waiting for. I think this Ares is... It's confusing that it's picked this early. I'm not sure if the Leviathans would have even thought about banning that out. I think it's a very risky pick. Usually we see an Ares either have a dominant game or they kind of the reason that the team loses, and I think Jake might struggle here, I'd say.
Yeah, Ares is one of those gods you don't typically see in a top 3 for very many supports anymore, and a lot of teams, because of that, and because he's not like the forefront god for a lot of the support roles, you know, you're thinking more like the Fafnirs, the Ymirs, people kind of just forget that Ares exists, even in these more high mobility compositions.
If anything, I would almost expect for the Leviathans to be even more aggressive with this Raijin in the early game, because if they're able to just, you only need to kill Ares once, maybe twice max, and then his credibility for the rest of the game is pretty much shot. He's not going to really be tanky, he's not going to really deal that much damage either, because he'll likely be behind an itemization that would be able to funnel into his passive. This Heimdall as well can go either way, but I think Heimdall especially just home runs Ares anytime he tries to initiate on him.
Yeah, I think the Ares is just a really easy target here for Leviathans to look through if they ever want to play around red buff invades especially. And I mean, Zap on Heim, you can never be annoyed at that.
You know, even in a best of 5, it's funny to see that it's a Game 3 Heimdall from Zapman. This is when they're on the Game 3 of a best of 3 set. This is what he always goes to. It's the old reliable, but it's not a best of 3 today. It's a best of 5, but doesn't matter. We're still going to get Heimdall from him out here. As the second round of bans went through, we saw Gilgamesh and Izanami taken away, and the Apollo Ymir. Curious that the Bolts would actually ban the Apollo despite the performance Bear has had on these last couple of games.
Well, his performance in the last game, he didn't really get to have as much of an impact with that global capability that Apollo is typically known for. Not only that, but would definitely say that Apollo a little bit weaker trying to box into the Heim, especially during the laning phase. And the CC Immune Ultimate can take a second to actually proc, so that makes it a little bit easier for the Heimdall to get an advantageous initiation against him. Ratatoskr, though, I like this component here for the Bolts, because one thing they do need with an Ares is you need another consistent form of beads burn application, and Cabrakan, while he does technically have 2 separate stuns, I'm not sold that would be enough. So having the Ratatoskr is definitely a good look here, and the Hachiman to kind of round things out, that feels like a little bit more of an initiation feature as well from Barracuda.
I think it's more just to make sure he has at least even matchup in duo lane. I don't think they want to like drop any pressure if possible.
2 or 3 times in the laning phase, still was putting out serious damage whenever it came to the team fights, still was able to make a big impact with the CC and his walls. So it doesn't surprise me too much, I suppose, but I still come away from this draft feeling really good if I'm a Leviathans fan. I mean, you've got Shinto on Raijin, undefeated on that pick, right? During phase 2.
So at least during phase 2.
Yeah, so that immediately feeling pretty good about that. You've got really good anti-heal applicators. You've got a great team fighting support in this Terra. A little surprised that you picked it into a traditional counter matchup in Ares.
It's not really one that, until they're left in a 1v1, that I expect to see much of.
Exactly. Hachi is just the character that can help facilitate the dive a little bit with his ultimate in team fights. You can do a little bit there, but mostly just there for some safety, good laning phase, can't really be bullied too hard. You're run-of-the-mill hunter.
Well, speaking of bullied, Panatom getting forced away from the blue buff here. Good stun from Haddix, but he's just going for the zone. Lasbra going for the buff kill. Steals that one away, and looks like Yarkor just a little bit too late to help with that one.
Very possible. Yeah, very possible. This is game 1, only, what, 15 kills, he said? Game 2, a lot more in that department.
They're
now
just balancing it out.
Exactly. Reverting back more towards the game 1 pace for sure.
Well, it is a... That's fun. I like poking fun at it when they're this
Here
slow.
we go.
We'll see if they can do something here, though. Wrong. Use the one who gets caught out. A good ult coming down from Haddix, locks him up. And just in the blink of an eye, 12-minute first blood. Feels good to call that one out. And you finally get the lockdown if you're the Bolts. Take a 500 lead and turn it to 1,100.
Hey, sometimes that quick shift into the extra gear will catch your passenger off guard, and that's exactly what happened there to Rongyu. He thinks that, guys, we're just politely trading mids, like we're not taking it serious here. We're just trying to wait it out. And then it's Haddix blink in as soon as he hits level 12, picks it up, and is able to use it aggressively.
Now this Oracle Vision on the side of the Leviathans, they see that this Gold Fury not only is being taken, but now is at 1/4 HP. Panatom's in the neighborhood, not going to be able to get there in time. Bolts get themselves the Gold Fury and the first blood. And the left side mid camps. I'll call that out as well because they were able to pick that up thanks to Lasbra. It's something to hang your hat on and feel confident in. Something you can't feel confident in right now, I think, is just Haddix in general. 3 members of the Leviathans over here. Haddix gets stunned out, locked down, taunted up, and they're going to keep chasing him. The wall's not going to get enough separation, but a good stun. The tower helping him out. Some trembles. He's just buying time for his team to get here. Haddix goes down, but Lasbra comes crashing in. Yarkor is incredibly low, but a great taunt from Panatom pulls back the Bolts. They leap through, and the Leviathans get their kill and get out.
What a play from Panatom, man. Gets the kill onto Haddix underneath the tower. Plays so patiently on that Cobra's Kiss. Waits it out perfectly. Yeah. Lasbra's going a little bit hybrid, though mostly offensive. Looks like it's going to be a serrated edge after this on Chile. So I don't know if the Leviathans are really going to have enough, because remember, against healer comps, you don't need to do 100% of the health bar. You need to do 125 or 130% of everyone's health bar.
We'll see if they're able to do that. Jake gets aggressed on, finally gets the Ares ult that he would want, pulls in Panatom. That's all they wrote for now. Lasbra looking for the dive deep, knocks up 2 in the process, but only able to find those 2. Lots of damage onto Yarkor right now, though. Crit, it looked like ring and true for Vera. Finished the Wind Demon, and he's hitting decently hard, but no one dies just yet. The Bolts, Leviathans, take a couple steps back, but the Bolts start the Fury.
Because they've got the Hell, and this is the problem, is that you can't really go low damage compositions against Hell. Because if you don't kill them in the first rotation, you're host. I mean, you just have no options after that. And no Ankh quite yet. You just now hitting level 12 and buying that Cursed Ankh. That would have made a difference in that fight. And it's not like Shindo's going to be doing less effective damage. He's only going to continue to do more. So I don't think the Leviathans just can't win with this comp, but I think it is going to be difficult.
Well, the Bolts, surprising me, actually going for the tier 2 here, putting some pressure on it. Lasbra going to join the fray. Potentially looking for a gank there. They're going to go ahead, pump the brakes, call it back.
No, not super far ahead, but I like this decision to stay grouped. I think the Bolts should just keep taking fights, because it's not like the Leviathans missed a whole lot in that fight. I mean, that was Earth and Fury and Tycho Drums through the middle of that team fight, and no one from the Bolts even got close to being under threat. So if I'm on the Bolts, I think I'm sticking around and trying to keep these fights going.
Well, key was grouped up fights. Lasbra didn't get the grouped up part, got the fight part. Now let's eat an ult from Panatom as well. as a blink there from Hardcore, but it's the tier 2 on left that the Bolts find for their success. Ult for ult trade from the junglers, and the beads burn from Lasbra. Ultimately, it's all about the gold right now, though. This is a, much more interesting position for them to be in. Feels like a lot of skirmishes, despite there only being 2 kills on the board. 21 minutes in, the Bolts are controlling this lead. The Leviathans have to play things a little more cautiously. Normally, and we've highlighted this, Odessa said it too, Game 2, a very important one. Game 3, maybe more important. Yarkor running at the Bolts right now, has backup. Shinto, Zapman, and crew about to join the solo lane skirmish. Tier 1 has no health. Panatom blinks forward. They're looking to continue this chase, but the tremors from Haddix are enough to pull them back. A 5-man grab from Jake, but not all of them are getting pulled in. He's going to eat a little bit of damage in return. Vin is half health. Vin is taken out there. Shinto, credit for the kill, and they're going to be able to dive even deeper. Sent through the realms is going to be Lasbra, dead on impact. Solo for 2.
Hey, and the big one is the hell that they got. And what do you know, Gore? It's like, this Raijin gets Soul Reaver, and all of a sudden, the damage starts to feel like it's actually there. But the big thing there is also that Panatom was able to find a blink into the back line and a last breath onto Veneno. He can have all the protection that he wants. He can have all the relics that he wants. The reality is that he isn't healing for a long time once he gets hit by that.
Well, Jake taunted in, forced to use his own beads here. Panatom is going to take and break that support if given the opportunity. Forced to fall back. All of the Bolts are retreating right now. Not enough healthy members on the side of the Leviathans that Fire Giant's in the conversation. In fact, if Barra keeps hitting crits like that, there's not going to be enough healthy members on the Leviathans to do much. 23 minutes in.
I think this is super smart from the Bolts. I'd pull this Fire Giant in this position because you highlighted it. The last fight, Jake grabbed 5 people and got 5 beats throughout that team fight. We should be trying to fight here. Just pulling Wrongview, I don't think it's good enough.
Well, he gets only wrong you. They get the kill, and that's going to be beneficial. But is it going to win them the fight? Barra forced to ult to get away from Yarkor. Yarkor continuing the chase down onto Haddix, who's at 2/3 or 1/3 HP as he keeps getting taken down. Barra killed off by Zapman in the back. Lasbra too low to engage. Haddix has to retreat. Jake left on his lonesome under a tier 1. That doesn't matter. We're 23 minutes in. Leviathans keep chasing him down, and they're looking for more kills. Right now, they've only killed off the Hunter. They're going to take the solo laner for good measure.
And that should be Fire Giant here for the Leviathans. I mean, Lasbra no ultimate for a long period of time, and Ven no relic, so he's not going to be super interested in stepping up to help. And I really feel like the Bolts had the right idea. Let's group, let's fight. We know we've got the relic advantage, and the Bolts aren't. You're not really too scared of running away from them.
Well, Lasbra caught out here. In fact, the entire kit being dropped from Panatom onto Lasbra does force the ult out of there. That tick damage from the Circuit ult going to get him low, but not dead. He's out of the fight effectively for a little bit. That blink is the only thing left for Lasbra that is maybe going to have a big impact, and the Leviathans move immediately into the Fire Giant. They're going to start it up.
Lasbra not able to get close without use of that ultimate, so this should be a pretty good idea here for the Leviathans, but the Bolts aren't going to give this up without a fight. They're going to have to try and do it. And remember, no real secure on either side.
Yeah, Jake, Haddix are the ones standing at the forefront here. Fire Giant at about 1/4, still dropping. Zapman doing the DPS. They're going to go ahead and let that one stay back. Immediately, Yarkor to the back line. And Jake up into the front line, trying to pull in as many Leviathans as possible. Doesn't pull in anybody. In fact, eats his health bar. Almost dead. One more hit will do it. And Zapman's going to be able to secure the kill onto that one. Yarkor leading the way for his team. Lasbra forced to dash away. One hit away from Barra left alone next to Haddix, but he's trying to turn around and fight. He's way going to find a kill. Yes, he at least gets rid of Shinto, but he loses himself. He loses Haddix. Zapman finds 3, and they're going to turn right back to that FG.
Man, such a long fight there for the Leviathans, and you'd think that the long fights should favor the Hell composition, but if Ven's going to stay that far back, who cares? We'll just take what we can get. And they just insist on hitting who's in front of them, which is the best thing that you can do a lot of the time. And they really punished Jake and Haddix for going too deep. Shinto expected a bit more damage from the squad there with his double jump in.
Lasbra's up on the, well, the branch of Yggdrasil. I don't know if he has much steal potential. That thing's going to time out before he's able to crash down in there. Fire Giant Once again, 1/3 HP dropped by the Leviathans for a second time, and the aggression. Hey, guess what, Venenu? You're left alone this time, and Panatom's chasing you down. No healing available just yet, but a great pull from Jake. Peels for the mid laner and keeps him alive. Unfortunately, he's now half health, and the Leviathans are going to keep going.
Too deep for the Leviathans. Panatom gets walled off, and the rest of the bolts, the cavalry has arrived, and now you've got the Hell and Ares sustain in order to stay here and get there. Leviathans just don't stick to the objective, and I think that in that situation, it's so scary to be coin flipping a fire giant like that, but you can't take the dive onto the Hell, especially understanding that everyone should have said, yeah, she's got both of her relics. That's too deep in that situation.
Oh, speaking of too deep, I don't even know if Jake was that deep, but he is gone. Zapman, credit for the kill. They get the Pyromancer for the bolts, but what will it cost? Haddix is now the next on the chopping block. Nothing left to survive. Zapman gets the double kill, assisted there by Shinto. Hey, Lasbra, guess what? You're the next one up. But he does have that dash, does get the disengage. The Leviathans are not letting them get away with anything this game.
Man, just way too far forward there from Jake, not respecting the Terra CC whatsoever. Range CC, the bane of Ares' existence.
Oh, Yarkor, maybe the bane of the Bolt's existence right now because he's turning it around, setting up his team. They drop the FG, Vin goes down, Para gets sent through the realms, comes crashing to his demise, and Lasbra waiting on the branch, jumps down. Deicide here for the Leviathans. They're going to get an FG and find themselves in a really comfy spot.
They should hold this for EFG as well. I mean, they should DPS this low and then hold it there, but they are a little bit weak in order to do that. They've got a little bit of Terra sustain, but the Bolts just kind of doing the same mistake that the Leviathans just did, all-inning onto the wrong character in that position. I mean, the RDO is not the one to try and kill in that moment. Yarkor just baits a little bit too well. Shinto has hit the late game stage, and all of a sudden, he's doing too much damage for the healing to really contest.
4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! Leviathans get themselves an enhanced fire giant.
Leviathans, and then Zapman just gets to slam with his auto attacks. I mean, that's really just been the formula.
3-1 and 9, I'll throw out for Shinto. Affected all but one kill. Somebody else has done that this game. It's Zapman, 8-0 and 4. All but one kill for the Leviathans being affected by him. 8 of them just straight up being him. But this is where things get a little different, aggro. We're seeing, yeah, enhanced fire giant tier 2s, they're gone. They don't matter anymore. But the Phoenix, it's a lot harder to get over or to overstep yourself when you're at your Phoenix line. So theoretically for Jake and Haddix, this is a better spot for their defense to go, but it's a 3-2 split from the Leviathans.
Oh, now it's Lasbra in trouble, has to use the beads, and Haddix is in onto Shinto, got his beads as well.
Well, I said maybe going too deep. This might be in a good wall from Haddix, is going to separate the team fight. Jake goes up for the ult and gets a little bit of the pull, but the sustain seems to be favoring the Leviathans. They get rid of the Phoenix. Lasbra is up on the tree, but what can he do? He has to crash down back. The bolts stay alive, and they do heal up in the fountain, but they lose the Phoenix to do so.
Everything up and available, really the only one on the Leviathans that you can say that about. Bear's been doing a ton of damage. Look at those two dueling at the top of the player damage charts. Which Hunter's going to be able to do it here?
Well, Bear's got 8K up on Zap, so he's going to hold on to the crown for a little bit longer. A minute and a half, a little under that, for this EFG still available. Phoenix is just one hit away from getting taken down on the left-hand side, but one hit means it's not quite dead just yet. Leviathans have to put in a little more work. Yet they're timid to go ahead and get aggressive. Terra healing, keeping them going. Phoenix goes down, bolts start to fall back. Haddix gets a stun onto Panatom. The Leviathans are going to go ahead and go for the engage. Panatom gets isolated and killed off. The rest of the Leviathans turn to run.
Terra doesn't have that ultimate anymore. Used it just now in that engagement. And yeah, they kill Panatom. They send the Leviathans running. Leviathans don't care. They got what they came for. And then just start to rotate over after a couple waves.
Fire Giant about to come crashing down any second now. The Leviathans have the group up. They have the ward vision. They might have the Jake. Jake is seemingly caught out here, rooted out. Yarkor is going to continue chasing him, but there is a good stun to return. It gets the beads, and you had already highlighted it. No blink on the Ares. Makes it more difficult to try and find the engage he wants. Leviathans, instead of grouping up for FG, look like they might group up to take a tier 2.
This is just waiting for their fire waves to push up. So biding time, not going towards the fire giant that's going to do a bunch of damage to them. Panatom lurking to try and catch Lasbra on his rotation over.
Yeah, just waiting in the jungle. He's either going to get Lasbra or he's going to get Vin, one of the two, because they are the ones that are falling deep in the backline of the Bolts. You have to watch left side fire minions starting to run into the base. Mid fire minions right there at the tier 2 line for the Bolts. They're going to be able to get aggressive. That gets caught out. He goes through the Bifrost, though. That gets him out alive. But is it enough? Barra gets a huge crit. One more hit is all it will take. Lasbra is able to find it. They shut down Zapman, and now they're trying to turn this fight around. Haddix gets a good stun on Shinto in the back, but they're so separated as of right now. The Phoenix is taking damage in mid all the while. They need to win this fight, or they're the Bolts. Barra, Lasbra go down. Yarkor is so close to dead, but they aren't able to secure it. They've lost most of their damage dealers. Vin's just trying to keep them alive, but they're forced to run away.
Titans dying at the same time. Bolts on a clock, but Vin gonna step up and try and send someone back. Shinto now down to a sliver, and Haddix gonna finish him off.
They're gonna be able to find a little bit more. Vin's going for the back. Titan 1/3 HP, and they're trying to stall out the Leviathans. It will be a back from Rongyu. It will be the back from Panatom, and the Bolts narrowly avoiding having the minions. And I don't even know what I want to call it. Look, left side fire minions coming in, mid fire minions coming in. You got to go back to the Titan guys and make sure that this defense happens.
Scary situation now for the Bolts, but they get their left side Phoenix up. The big thing is that mid Phoenix ended up falling in the midst of that, which means that this Titan won't start to regen for quite some time. Maybe you go Oni into trying to end, but good ward coverage here from the Bolts means that they can't just waltz in. I mean, they'll engage on you in the lane.
Get that Oni Fury. You can see those waves spawned right as they're marching down the lane. Maybe one of the scariest things you can see, the Fire Oni minions there in mid. Fire Giant started up by the Leviathans 39 minutes in. It'll be the second enhanced FG that we've gotten to see. We'll see what they can do with it as they're getting aggressive. Panatom almost goes too deep. It's getting low. Haddix is going in. They're going for the kills, and they're going to actually be able to come in. Let's take the Fire Giant away. Jake is going to be able to pull someone back in. They get a kill on a Zapman. They do lose Vin in the process. The fight still rages on. Yarkor burned away, and now they have Barra's damage to thank for it. Lasbra's deep in the back line, and the Bolts are looking for more.
But who's backing? No one's backing yet from the Bolts, and Barra's in trouble now as Panatom has chased him down. Jake is here, but someone's got to go back. Rongyu, stop! No, he missed! He didn't stop Haddix's back. That might have been enough in order to change the course of this game, but the Bolts steal away the Fire Giant. They kill 3, and Haddix is back in time to defend against this Oni Fire Wave. Looks like we're going to ride along with Venenu to see if he was the one who stole it away. And this is the problem, Gore, is that you just don't have guaranteed secure on your side. It was Ven that stole it away with that Dark Stance 1.
Sort of crit, which is maybe helping out the Bolts here. Barra with the Wind Demon Deathbringer has the dominance as well to just pack an extra punch. And they're starting to group up for the left-hand Phoenix Siege.
I mean, they only have about a minute and a half on FG, so not an eternity on this enhanced Fire Giant, and this is the only wave that they're threatening. I mean, you can let Lasbra go push mid all he wants. So this is a much easier siege to defend against if you're the Leviathans. They have better wave clear than the Bolts had, and they only have one wave.
Well, there's Haddix, blinks in, gets his ult, but doesn't necessarily do anything. Lasbra jumps into the back line, and he's going to be looking for a little bit more. Jake does not get any pulls. Haddix ends up going too far, and it's the turnaround. The Leviathans get the kill, save the Phoenix, and they're not pursuing anymore.
And that's the hard part. Whenever you only have one option, when your offense is one-dimensional, it's very easy to set up a defense around it.
Well, alliteration, and how fun it feels to say, because W's are a fun noise to make. But now it is that vision that's maybe going to be paying off. It's what allowed specifically Lasbra to get so deep into the backline. Panatom right now is pushing up mid, so he's away from his team, but maybe in a great spot to try and find a loop around if this fight breaks out. Bolts move forward. Bolts start running backward. They get back over to the solo lane, and that's actually going to be the engage here. Yarkor's the one trying to do it. Haddix is trying to get it going. Lasbra goes up. Panatom's on Vin, and it doesn't seem to be worrying Vin too much. His health bar is just fine. They dive in. Lasbra on the back onto Zap and trying to find a little bit more, but it's the forefront. It's Panatom right now who is taking too much. Pulled right in, taken right down, and Lasbra gets both relics from Zapman, still stays alive.
Man, the lack of blinks from the front lines on both sides really coming into play, but the fact that Panatom dies, relics are down for Ven, And Taiko drums are still up. Let's see what plays Shinto can make.
Oh, they're going to get aggressive. Yarkor slowed, stunned, and killed this time. It's a
Shinto!
3v5, but the damage, is it going to be good enough? Haddox ends up getting burned down. Vin is going to get taken down as well. Shinto's damage looks great, but can Barra can maintain the top? The answer is no.
Got 'em all.
Zapman gets a double kill. Lasbra left alive, and the Leviathans say, let's just forget the FG and go get that Phoenix.
Gotta be you can end in this position as long as Lasbra doesn't find a way on to Zapman in particular. But Shinto's got both his relics, so Shinto's job in this situation is just to bait his life and use his relics properly in order to secure the DSI.
All right, Lasbra, show us what you got. He's able to get onto Shinto, but he takes way too much damage in the process. The full-on DSI. The Phoenix will go down. The Leviathans will take game number 3. A little bumpy there towards the end, but they find their way to victory.
Look, that fight was so awkward at the beginning of that engagement. It just did not come to pass like both teams really expected. But I looking at that diamond for Shinto, that my man still has Taiko drums, his full build Raijin going into that fight, and the Bolts just did not play around that ultimate cooldown at all.
Throughout that entire mid to late game was just focusing out Venenu, making him as uncomfortable as possible. It didn't matter how far back Venenu tried to sit with that health. There was always this Circuit riding along on top of him, and it was just impossible for him to really get away, and that was something that we kind of touched on as well looking at these drafts in the pregame, is that there was very low control in favor of the Bolts here. This was definitely more of that wrecking ball style of play where you need to get one pick and then you need to further collapse immediately after.
And one thing that we didn't really get to see a whole lot of was big ultimates coming from this Ares. One thing that, you're drafting Ares into this. One of the things you have the benefit of is that cripple against these super high mobility targets. But outside of that cripple he was providing, he wasn't able to get very many ultimates. I mean, really in this composition for what more could this Ares have done for them maybe?
I think it's just the character reached its limit for the Bolts. I feel like they controlled the early half of the game, I'd say, the first 25 minutes. But eventually it gets to a point where Jake was ulting 5 people, but they would just ignore it. They would press beads, they'd pop onk and run forward and ignore him. He just became a non-factor, I feel like.
Yeah, it was a constant. Every time I saw Jake go in and get 4 or 5 people with ultimate, there's 4 or 5 sets of beads that got popped immediately in response for the Volts. They were able to hold out in the early stages. In fact, Barracuda putting in a ton of damage. I believe he topped the charts amongst all of it. 52,000 player damage. A lot of it, though, against the tanks. It didn't feel like he was getting those big, impactful hits like Zapman was with his Heimdall. Number 4 of the best of 5 kickoff.
And I think immediately Bolts sitting in this first pick position, I wouldn't be too surprised to see them maybe even try to stray away from the Hell entirely, possibly even just looking to ban the Hell outright. That way they don't leave it open for the Leviathans. They could possibly even look to just try and solidify themselves a nice frontline addition, because where we did see success for the Bolts in that first game was from them getting that frontline online early.
I guess we could see Artio maybe in the first pick, but again, it's like, if you give up the Hell to Leviathans, they are more than comfortable playing into this Artio. They want the Hell. So it's definitely a tough one for the Bolts. So
it's one of those things where you kind of just have to take it almost. It feels like you're forced to take the Hell if you don't ban it here, and that's the big question that the Bolts have to ask themselves is, do we want to play it? Well, the answer to that is no, we don't want to play it, and we definitely don't want that in Shinto's hands, so they'll ban that one away alongside the Osiris and the Erlong Shen. Those have been the 2 primary bans that the Bolts have had out here against them, trying to get some target against Panitum.
And I know that I mentioned solidifying that frontline early. Artio has definitely been a very heavily contested pick between these 2 teams, Cerberus as well, but I do think it's worth, I was going to say, visiting the territory of maybe picking that Raijin up first just to get a strong burst mage, but Circuit is kind of a hit or miss when it comes to that first pick outright. Yeah,
for sure. I think it's a big risk picking this character. I think it's flexible, I guess, which is the biggest thing, but like you said, Artio is just directly a very good pick into this, and you're still leaving Raijin open for Shinto after the game he just had. This is just really risky, I'd say.
some of the big impact hitters aside from the Serket. Yes, Serket is powerful, but it's really just with these two teams that we've been seeing this goddess picked a lot more between, it's strange to say, but even between both support and jungle for both of these teams, it has that level of flexibility. Maybe they feel that that's one of their more impactful portions to try and get something early for themselves, but they left open the Ardeo and the Raijin. Shinto maintained his undefeated streak with the Raijin. You think he can do it again here in this one?
And this is such a strong 2-for-1 special here,
sure.
If you're asking me. The Leviathans, I doubt that they have any complaints right now about the fact, because, again, I bring up Ardeo and Raijin as being one of the two primary options for the Bolts, because you have to assume, after that Game 3 performance, that the Leviathans are definitely going to be looking to prioritize at least the Raijin. I'm not surprised to see them prioritizing this Ardeo again either. It's just crazy that the Serket was the prime choice here for the Bolts, just because Serket, when you take her this early on, it's so open to being countered, or at least looking for options that are going to restrict her movement so that she can't harass the likes of a Raijin as easily. And right now, we only see the Ardeo crippled field, which is definitely not the worst case scenario for a Serket by any means, but the likes of a Gilgamesh is still open. Having that Winds of Shamash to further restrict her mobility is also problematic, I think, for the Terra and Cerberus even.
I think also Bolts just showing their hand, like kind of letting Leviathans know exactly where these picks are going is probably not ideal either. I think it would be good to keep the Serket flex, but I guess they're not too worried about bottom tiering the carries.
Now they just immediately go with the Terra and Cerberus as a response to this RTO Raijin. So all of the front line has been locked in for the Bolts. The Leviathans still have 3 more picks available to themselves. They've got their mid, they've got their solo lane. Don't think we're going to see RTO flex over that way. And we can see Gilgamesh locked in as well. This one has kind of been ignored a little bit, kind of a phase 2 ban for it, but making sure to pick this one up and get Panitza one of those more warrior-centric jungle matchups here, Taco. How does this one look for them?
It's just such an ideal pick here for the Leviathans, because you already know exactly where these picks are intended from the Bolts, so it's not like there's any sort of ambiguity that the Leviathans to be like, oh, well, we'll guess and check later on in the compositions. Again, a little unfortunate for the Leviathans, I'm sure. I know there was probably a tough decision between taking this Gilgamesh or the Heimdallr after Zap's performance on the Heim. No surprises that the Bolts are going to prioritize banning that one away, but Chernobog still left open. Even Rom could be another strong pick.
Well.
Yeah, Jingwei, Izanami, and they're all tools, I think, that can not only feasibly escape from what the Bolts have drafted for, but also just have really strong follow-up presence for the front line that the Leviathans have as well.
Yeah, I feel like Leviathans, it almost looks like they got to blind pick the top 3. I mean, these are picks that they've been very strong with the whole split recently. I don't know what Ven's going to lean to here either. There's a lot of mages taken off the board. He's probably going to have to pick something pretty low tier, I'd say.
He may even have to be kind of forced back to that Giannis that we saw in the very first game.
Banned
that
out.
got left open. Morgan and Merlin were the 2 gods banned away by Leviathans in phase 2, and that gives Rom, who, interesting enough, Rom was one of those early discussion points, kind of one of those top 3 hunters, but neither team have really even looked at this god so much this game. Why here in game 4 are we finally seeing this Rom, Taco?
I think the Rom here is because he buys so much time. When you look at the collapse features from the Bolts, those are going to be overtime proc abilities. And Rom, when he's sitting up inside of that Astral Barrage, you don't know if he's going to cancel it early either. You could always look for a rollout bail opportunity, but it's also just a nice range damage application that could be incredibly problematic for the likes of a Soul, for the likes of a Serket. There is some objective shred being introduced, though, between this Soul and Apollo that the Bolts have opted for, but the overall burst in comparison to what the Leviathans have, definitely still leaning a little bit more in the Leviathans'
I just feel like the Bolts comp is all over the place. There isn't really a theme to this draft. I mean, and then you look at the Leviathans draft, it's perfect. There isn't really any flaws in it right now. They have great pressure. They have good late game. I mean, the Jingchen, pretty hard to lock down support for these double ADC focused carries as well.
And just sits on top of Serket the entire time.
Yeah, you're looking at some area control a little bit with the Cerberus in the ultimate, but you're also looking for some team fight out of Terra.
Total agreement with their estimation of this draft. I think the Leviathans came away with a really, really good one. But that being said, I think that the Bolts have a lot of good tools in this draft. I really like Terra and Cerberus together. It's really good magic damage with solid front line. CC kind of does it all for you. I'm not upset at that. I think that this set in general has had a lack of threat on objectives in even states. We saw it in the last game that Enhanced Fire Giant got stolen away.
By a Hell 1, by the way.
By a Hell 1. Now you've got a composition that actually threatens you on an objective in a comp with Hell with Soul and Apollo. So I like that aspect of the composition for the Bolts, but man, I don't know. This Leviathan comp has everything. CC, damage.
He's had good patience. This duo lane, you can tell Bera and Jake really just want to get in there, get aggressive. They don't want to lose this one, and they're trying to take that advantage and push it as far as they can.
I mean, not having beads or not having blink or frenzy right away is, look at this, double blink engage from Rongu.
And there's going to be the leap as well, not going for the dropkick damage, low on Bera, and they're not going to be able to find him. Misses the dropkick as well, the tower line, the saving grace. Zap on the other side, forced to run away when he's one hit. Nobody dies, but the Bolts come out a little bit ahead. Vin's actually over here on the right-hand side of the map, or left-hand side of the map, as he looks to try and collapse in on him. He's going to be going in for the purple buff, drops the Supernova. Panatom first jumped away, and that's going to get him out alive, but it is a purple buff taken away from the Leviathan. Easy FGs. It comes down to that secure conversation you had mentioned again. It's that burn. We always talk about it with Merlin. Those Taiko drums were just so heavy-handed in that last fight that I'm sure it's weighing on the Bolts' memory just as much as it is on mine. And the Bolts are looking to get aggressive. It's going to be the Leviathans instead that jump in. Bera as well. I'm sorry, Vin and Jake trying to get away this time around. It's Jake at half health, but it's Panatom who gets burned down for first blood. Lasber's able to find that one, and the rest of the Leviathans just turn and run. The Bolts knew what they have. They're going to even go for a Scorpion.
Man, what is Panatom waiting for to drop the Winds of Shamash? An invitation from the Bolts? He's got to press forward at some point in that team fight, but he got CC chained, really locked up. And because that ultimate isn't down, you're losing a lot of your effective area control.
A fulcrum for this game? I mean, that is where everyone's going to be leveraging their capabilities off of.
So that might be a bit of trouble because Jake's on the way, but with Shinto hovering to that side of the map as well, they decide to not get too aggressive onto the back-to-back 2 times. So it ends up being no harm, no foul on that left-hand side. But I agree, Gore. I mean, this Serket has got to go big in this game, and really it's got to be in the name of shutting down Shinto in these team fights. And Serket does not have the damage with the build that is popular right now for her to 1v1 a Raijin at any point in the game. So he's going to need some help in that regard. Haddix has got to be there, Jake's got to be there, Bera's got to be there. Got to be a team effort now.
Well, team effort. Pyromancer goes the way of the Leviathans. Bolts starting up the Fury. As of right now, a little bit of vision. Actually, a lot of bit of vision from the Leviathans. They have the Oracle Harpies. Watching this one, there's the Winds of Shamash. Not enough to be able to steal away the Gold Fury. Bolts consume it, get it. They also have the only kill. Lasvra looks for the disengage. Shinto actually takes more damage than he anticipated. Forced to ult to get away from Haddix there. And so the Leviathans walk away.
Terrific looks good. Witchblade I'd be fine with. You probably, Bera I assume is going to be going crit because he's been going triple bow up front and then going into Wind Demon Deathbringer. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're kind of forced into buying that Spectral. The good news if you're the Leviathans is that no Frenzy here for the Bolts. Not having that Frenzy is a really big deal, and that's where I was talking earlier about Jake having to buy beads, or feeling like he has to buy beads. It matters quite a bit. I'm a little surprised that he didn't go Blink Frenzy. I guess the Xingqian ultimate is what scares him enough in this matchup. But no Frenzy on this comp. It's kind of like you're missing a condiment on your burger. You know what I mean? Something's not quite right.
It still tastes fine, but like you said, something's missing. Primal Fury right now is missing about half its HP. But it doesn't seem to be getting dropped too much. Leashed a few times there and back to restorative full health. Yarkor takes a lot of pokes, so does Haddix. Lasbra goes deep into the backline of the Leviathans, but he's the one who's getting caught out. Forced to jump away. Up into the sky goes Zap, where his snipe's going to be ringing true. Bera flying around on his chariot. The fight is divided, and Zap is alone. Haddix recognizes it, is chasing him down. He's at about half HP. A good stun from Jake, and they're trying to lock up the Hunter. There's going to be the ult from Haddix, and Zap's going to be the first one to fall down. But what's it going to cost for him? Lasbra regroups with his team. The rest of the Leviathans try to collapse in, but they don't have the damage, they don't have the chase, and they just have to sit back and watch.
Close fight, though, at the very end of it. I mean, Shinto Just not able to get as much damage off as he really wanted to with those Tycho drums, and the healing from the bolts comes into play. Another good ultimate from Jake. A little bit of sustain on top of that. Not enough anti-heal or enough damage, I would say. Not enough anti-heal necessarily, but it's damage that's lacking in that situation. Now Shinto has been caught.
Oh, he's not Thunder Crash. Very patient from Shinto. Clears the wave. He's absolutely
double stun.
In trouble there and is still able to get out. Yarkor goes in. Is able to peel for the team. At this point, it feels like that's all the Leviathans are getting. Peel at best. 4,000 gold. Potentially rising here for the Bolts. They start up the Pyromancer. They're looking to continue this onslaught, this fight. But notably healing while they still have Terra, not as much as the games have passed. The Leviathan's still in the spot to fight.
A bit risky though. I mean, Barra has no relics, no beats for Ven. Rongyu's ultimate's coming up.
Oh, the Pyromancer goes down. Bolts are able to secure that. Rongyu low and forced to fall away. Hasn't been able to get that Xing Chen ult until just now, and it's not going to be enough. Shinto, on the other hand, gets right to where things need to be. Kills off Barra. Vin has no mana. The snipes from Zapman are going to be able to secure the kill. Jake is just forced to watch as his carries die, but Haddix, Lasbra in the backline. Panatom forced to run in a safe path and might not be safe enough. Lasbra's coming around the corner, gets the taunt, gets the kill, but will they be able to return it? Haddix goes down under the tier 2. Jake looking to root out Yarkor, gets a stun even on the disengage, and it ends up being a 3 for 2.
Yeah, greedy pull there from the Bolts on that Pyromancer.
He has been able to pick up every single thing for the Bolts, so he is definitely the divining rod for them to try and push this to game number 5. Barra and Vin, both in that engagement. You had mentioned how it wasn't necessarily a good call already for the Bolts to start it, but they're the ones who end up getting burned down first and foremost. They get this tier 2 on left. Rongyu goes in for the ult, does get some beads, but doesn't get too much. Pulled back towards him. There is the damage. Snipes from Zapman, looking to find any damage and potentially a kill on to Haddix, but it's Lasbra left alone. Goodbye 4-0. Goodbye perfect record. He gets killed off.
And not enough help for him on that backline dive. I mean, the Bolts just can't close that gap. Blink not used there from Jake. A solo tank Circuit is not killing anybody in this one.
Power spikes. You had talked about them earlier. Spare the Magus was what you had mentioned for Vin. Doesn't have that just yet, but Wind Demon is scooped up there for Barra. And he might be looking for a little bit of a kill, fishing for Zap, and is at least going to get him to roll away. The disengage has been used, but now it's the turnaround. The Leviathans were waiting for it. Panatom tries to set up some kills. Vin's half health, Panatom's even lower, and it looks like they're falling back. Winds of Shamash dropped, and that's the disengage for the teams.
That's beads on Jake, that's beads on Ven. A lot used in order to try and make that catch happen, and Zap playing it cool. That debuff falls off. That can't be happening. And Lasbra is again on these solo missions, and that's what you have to be on Circuit. You know, you're not making plays with everyone right in front of you the vast majority of the time, but that's where great communication between him and Haddix and him and Jake on these blink-ins and who they can get on top of and that kind of stuff, that all matters.
Well, isolated so far. Venenu chased down by Yarkor. That's going to create some separation. Lasbra is in the backline waiting for the Leviathans. They've started the Gold Fury. It's half health as of right now. Aggressive is Jake. Blinks forward, throws the ult out. Vin goes in. Vin gets taken down. Shinto, credit for the kill, and he's going to be ringing true for his damage, but he's at half health right now. The Tycho drums have been used, and Barracuda is isolated. 3 members of the Leviathans trying to get him. Unfortunately, that means they don't have enough to save their own mid laner. They lose Shinto in the process, and now it's the turnaround. What can they pick up? Lasbra ult back up, thrown onto Panatom. He's going to leap away. It's a 3v4, and Zapman tries to ring true. Gets stunned out. He has to roll away. He's still alive as of right now, but how much longer can he last? The damage is good. It's a kill on the Lasbra, finally taken down by Haddix, but Jake is isolated. They're still going for the Leviathans, and they're still looking for more. Turn it into a 3v1. What can Haddix pick up? What can he find? And right now it feels like the answer is nothing. The cripple field, the root, the lockdown is too good. The full-on deicide for the Leviathans.
Is Artio good, by the way? How much healing did Yarkor do
camera
in that fight? What in the world is that? Because there's no anti-heal for the Bolts. There's none whatsoever in their whole builds. And Yarkor just gets to scrap. Well, they force Zap out of that fight early, and then they're able to turn their attention to Shinto. All that, it's like, yeah, this is good. This is what you're looking for. And then it's like, all right, we did all the things. We killed all their damage. Let's win the fight. We've got Cerberus, passive for our anti-heal. That'll do it. And Yarkor is just like healing and healing and healing and healing, and he cannot be stopped in those engagements.
If you look very closely at all the pupils of the Leviathans players, it's turned into straight up money signs. But oh yeah, the bolts have started up the Fire Giant. Gold Fury taken for the Leviathans. But Yarkor shows up. He was popping off in his camera. He popped off in the last fight, and he's ready to pop off right here if necessary. Seems like that's going to be enough to make the bolts fall back. But you can see where their mind is at. They're ready to scrap.
Now this is where not having Frenzy matters a lot, right? I mean, if that was a frenzied Shogun Kasari sort of Terra with that much time, that fire's probably dead. They still had an opportunity if they just didn't want to take it. Now they're back on it. Bera, no relics. He's the one to watch.
I think Bera and Vin both ended up aggroing the Fire Giant, so they've got that little bit of a debuff. It's at half health. They're going to go ahead and leash that. Jake leaves the pool. Haddix is going to be the one who's aggressing Lasbra into the backline immediately onto Shinto. Shinto into the Taiko drums, and here comes Bera. But what? Gets hit down! Zapman is the one who takes him out. Lasbra still gets the return kill onto Shinto. Snipes ring true. Zapman lands. Panatom gets the kill for Lasbra. Now it's a 3v4, and they're chasing him down. Vin just trying to stay alive, but he's not going to escape it this one. And guess what? It's the RDO one more time.
And this time it's Shinto for 4 instead of Zap for 4. The dive is good onto the mid laner, but the rest of the Leviathans make the bolts pay. Not enough damage left in the tank to take down anyone else. And now this should be an easy Fire Giant for the Leviathans. And it's the same story, Gore. They're able to execute these initial dives just fine. You know, we know our target. They get on top of them. We're suicide bombing for Bera and Lasbra in order to kill Shinto. And then what's the plan to deal with the RDO? What's the plan to deal with the ROM? They just don't have one, and that makes it really, really easy for the Leviathans to show up and win the team fight after the fact. This team is working so well as a unit, and it's difficult to stop if you don't have the type of team composition to handle
in mid, waiting for them to just line their pockets one more time, and here's the group up.
And that's when we're talking about finite gold and how that's recoupable later on. It's being recouped right now, where this game is even as this Fire Giant siege begins, but the Leviathans are about to get a whole lot of gold that the Bolts have already claimed.
Look at Panatom. He's over here. He's split push onto this tier 2 in the left, and that's going to be able to engage them. Yeah, Lasbra is behind all of the Leviathans. We'll see if he can do anything about that. Bera is split pushing, being able to get that tier 2 on right. He's going to be forced to back, and he's going to be able to make it do so. Grouping up from 5, Leviathans move to left, and Lasbra's just chasing him.
And Bera's putting him on a clock. He's going to get this right side Phoenix. They've got to make a play.
They're going to be able to go in. They're getting aggressive. Vin is the target for Panatom, but he's not going to be able to find it. Phoenix goes down. Same can be said for Bera on the right-hand side of the map. He finally gets that back off. Haddix is half health. The Leviathans are going to be looking for a little bit more, but watch Lasbra. He's still in the backline, maybe actually isolated. Panatom sees him, doesn't get a stun, doesn't have enough lockdown. And Bera trades Phoenix for Phoenix.
That's huge in this position. That's a great play from Bera, and now the Leviathans need to get more than just Phoenix for Phoenix. Even though they get the better Phoenix, technically it's a win. But they're the ones, Fire Giant, they're the ones that need to be making plays in this position, not necessarily the Bolts.
You're going to need a little bit more, and more they want. They're jumping in. Haddix is isolated. Haddix is getting burned down, but Jake throws out the ult, gets the spread. Lasbra jumps into the middle of the fight, but there's the spin to win. The control looks good. Shinto's half health still alive. Taiko drums, going to be throwing out not a lot of damage, but Vin is just getting melted. Does make it into the Zaparate, stays alive. Bera comes crashing down into the backline, and maybe too deep, eats most of his health bar to do so.
Zap up, needs to hit him, hits one, and he takes down Bera, but Ven's still alive.
Got to be able to make it back to the fountain, get the healing, but look at the rest of the Bolts. They're starting to crumble. This Leviathans team has never beat them in a playoffs, but they've taken out 2 of them. They take out a Phoenix, and they're looking towards the Titan.
Have to do it now. You got 45 seconds, wave coming on the left-hand side, so you actually have some time, but Fire Giant buff probably not up for much longer.
Haddix right now trying to defend. Lasbra still in the backline. Haddix getting shredded as they speak. The Leviathans looking to do it. They're taking down the Titan, and they're able to get it 15-7. And in 3 games here in a row, they take out the Bolts.
The demons have been exercised for the Atlantis Leviathans. They finally
this is their
take
first
down
finals.
the Bolts. The first finals they're going to go to as an SPL team.
Especially that game. I mean, I think Bolts did a better job of shutting down the Regent a little bit. I mean, they targeted him in fights, but I mean, this Artio just no anti-heal really to deal with her. She's looking like prime King Arthur out here. Like, they literally could never get her low enough.
I think you described that in the break room as this is essentially just Magical King Arthur for it here. I mean, if I've learned anything from this set, probably even just this weekend, it's that you cannot be letting this Ardia through. She just seems to be a menace out of that solo lane.
I think if you are leaving it through, you just need to be more prepared to counter the god specifically. If you're allowing her to free cast and dive backline without any anti-heal or any real burst damage, I mean, she's going to be unstoppable and really run these team fights.
Not only that, but Zap, I mean, we're getting to see a lot of these highlight clips after the fact also, but he was really just kind of left untouched as well in the backline. I think that the Bolts had to put so much investment into trying to focus out Shinto on this Raijin that they completely forgot about this ROM, and it was just crit after crit after crit. Zapman just free casting to his heart's content in the backline.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zap had a great set. I mean, everyone did. Honestly, you can't really fault anyone on the Leviathans. It was just a great team performance the whole day.
8-2 as a finishing slash line there for Camelot Kings and the Tartarus Titans facing off. Titans getting a bit of an upset on the Dragons yesterday.
Some might consider it an upset, but I feel like for those of us that have been kind of monitoring this Tartarus Titans roster since the addition of not only when like they have sign or layers, but like when they even had sign up beforehand, I still think the Titans looked like a completely different team almost. Again, it's no flight to scary. It's just when you have junglers that are experienced, that are seasoned, and a little bit more comfortable with that position, it's just a lot easier to kind of facilitate the map pressure through your other carries like the mid lane and the ADC, and I think Cyclone and Paul have both looked fantastic. But I got to say one really quick. That was a quote of the day there from Shinto. Just don't get picked.
Yeah, pretty simple.
Just don't get picked for it. As you saw our predictions there prior, this next one is got 4 casters' predictions on the line for who could win this. Half of the 6 of us have voted for the Kings.